What is up? I hope you're pumped today. I am for sure, because today on the Podcast Domination Show, we are going over the 4-step framework: launch, distribute, monetize, scale. But before we get into that, if you're new to the show, this is the show to help you monetize and grow your podcast while having fun along the way, just like I'm doing right now on this Saturday where it's my content day and we're batch producing a ton of stuff. But that'll be for another episode. Anyways, we are going to jump into the first pillar, the launch pillar. And this is literally the same exact steps that I take all my clients through. Everybody who comes through Podcast Domination who wants to start a show, they go through these 4, sometimes 5 mini steps inside of the launch phase. So this is the blueprint. This is the 4-step framework. So we're going to cover pillar step number 1, however you want to call it, today. Mind you, there's a lot more we cover with new clients coming in, but we're going to cover just the quick and dirty today as to, hey, if you're sitting there, if you're listening to this, sitting there or standing or walking or driving your car, wherever you really, doesn't really matter. But if you're sitting there, this is going to help you figure out the steps and what sequence to put them in. Because the biggest thing with podcasting I've seen is that, yeah, everyone can do it. Anyone knows how to do it. But the problem is most people get is A, they're too busy, or B, or sometimes both, but B, they know everything to do. They just don't know in what sequence to do it in, right? And that is totally understandable. I've been there. I sometimes still feel like I'm there where I'm like, there's so much shit to do, and this is why for me, this framework and this process that we have helps me just kind of settle down. Okay, great. Like we're just going to start. We're just going to do this today. As a producer, as a podcast producer, and as a podcasting nerd, I get excited about starting new shows. Like I love it and I get pumped. So for me, it's always a fun experience, but it's also a bit of overwhelming experience because I want to do so many things at once. So this 4 weeks, I think I have 4. Yeah, I have 4 weeks here. I actually have 5 because I split up launch and pre-launch, but we're going to cover them. We're going to cover everything that we do with our new podcasters when they come in the door week by week. So the launch, step 1, week 1, really takes us about a week, and also a one-on-one call. This is blueprinting. So week 1 of launch, when you're thinking, you decided to, hey, I want to launch a show in about 4 or 5 weeks. What should I be doing this week to make sure I'm moving the needle, right? That is what we call blueprinting. So in blueprinting, we're all about looking for the who. We're looking for really who is going to watch this podcast, be impacted by it, and then be compelled to take an action that could potentially land you maybe a customer, a fan for life. Of course, it has to give that person value though. So we're trying to figure out the who and what is it that they want and what are they struggling with right now. So a couple ways we do that. Number 1, we send out a survey. We also do a very in-depth 1-hour call with them while we're just kind of picking their brains, figuring out who their customer is, figuring out who this podcast is for. Funny enough, a lot of times you pick and you realize that it's really just for them, disguised as a business endeavor, which is cool. But we have to do some reframing then with the content and where we want to steer the show. A couple of things we talk about in there are really the foundational things, like the hook and the end value proposition for the customer and where they want to drive traffic. Like what's the end goal for the podcaster and the listeners, right? And then also, of course, the biggest thing I would say is a podcast is great, but what's the overall big movement that we're starting here? A podcast, for me, this show is really to help podcasters get to the levels that but most of them, I'd say 95% of them, that's a fake statistic, by the way, but let's call it 95% of them, never get to the size they want and they never get to the monetary level that they want, right? So this show is geared to help them peel back the curtain and share with them what we're doing and how we're helping people do that. And also what are some ways they can start to do this stuff on their own. So week 1, we'll recap it really quick. We're looking for the who. We're trying to figure out who that customer, who that listener is on the other side. Who are they? What do they do? What are they struggling with? We normally approach that through getting a survey out there to the list. And then we start to figure out what are the big pillars that we can solve for them, right? In addition, on week 1, if they don't have equipment, we'll take care of equipment. So if you're starting, this is week 1, you probably want to take care of some equipment. Get yourself a nice little mic like this, ATR 2100. plug it into your computer. If you want to get fancier than that, then I'm probably not the guy for you. Just go to other blogs or other podcasts because I'm not going to cover that here. Besides that, I'm looking at my sheet right now. I'm cheating actually. But besides that, we figure out a little bit of the pillar content. So once you figure out the problems, you're going to figure out what are the pillars, big 3 things we're going to use to help solve those problems. And yeah, that's pretty much week 1. That is blueprinting in a nutshell. There is a structure and a system that goes to it that makes it a lot easier, but those are the big rocks you want to focus on. Week two, when it comes to launching phase is, for me personally, mapping out the content. So once I've done a deep dive on the customer, I've done a deep dive and I know really well who I want listening to this podcast, it's time to develop the content and develop the perfect episodes, the launch episodes that are going to land them, grab them, keep them for life. And a couple things that go on here. Number 1, we go through the perfect podcast planning worksheet, which is a worksheet that I'm pretty sure I've talked about here in many previous episodes. If you don't have a hand copy of that, I suggest you grab it. It is a lifesaver for me. I actually learned it from a guy named Andy Stanley, who is a pastor from Atlanta, Georgia, who's given some tremendously amazing stories or speeches. And these are the 5 questions that he uses to simplify the message and make sure he gets it across. Invaluable stuff. I've added some of my own stuff in here just to tailor it more towards podcasters, but the perfect planning worksheet, perfect planner is a game changer. So we go through that week 2. We also look at the 3. We've got by now a good idea of the 3 to 5 big episodes we want to come out with that are going to be just bombs, like amazing pieces of content. So that's another big piece. And then last but not least, we'll talk about the intros and outros. Then we'll also go over any kind of call to action that they want. Maybe it's a contest, maybe it's not a contest, something else, whatever the case may be. So we figure out really the recording there, and then we also get to record it later on in the week. We just had an amazing Austin barbecue here, so the food was great, and I'm kind of tired. Anyways, week 3, podcasting pumps me up too, so it's a good thing we're talking about podcasting. Week 3 is all about branding, and branding in the sense of not branding as like, because there's different levels to branding. I think high level branding is like the strategy, the feeling the customer perceives. We're talking about lower stuff. We're talking about like graphics, and we're talking about what the show is going to look and feel like. We're going to talk about colors. We're digging into what kind of music do we want. We're digging into design elements for branding on social media and things like that. On your Facebook page, on your Instagram, on your LinkedIn profile, all that stuff. That is where a lot of my team will take over and actually work with the podcaster to get all of that stuff right. So I'm a bit more actually hands-off in that section. I give my 2 cents and my feedback and help steer people in the right direction best I can. But that is all about week 3. If you got your episodes recorded, you know exactly who you're going for. You figured out, hey, this is the problems I'm trying to solve. Here's the movement I want to make with this podcast, because it has to be bigger than just a podcast. Once you've got that stuff squared away, let's say that's in 2 weeks, then we can move to branding, and we can move to intros, or not intros. We can move to the, how things are going to look and feel only after you've recorded the content. Because I really don't think you can, until you get it out on the mic and you hear it back and you agree or disagree with it, and maybe want to go back and change it. It's really hard to figure out where you're going until you've really done the work into the first 2 weeks, right? So that's why I wait till this is done, till those 2 weeks are done, to get like all the graphic design, all that stuff done. Week number 4. So assuming you've got episodes recorded, assuming you've got artwork, assuming you've got, let's say, a Libsyn account set up, which I know we didn't cover. I apologize. It's usually week 1. We'll go ahead and do that. And if you haven't signed up with Libsyn yet and you want a free month, you should use my discount code. It's an affiliate code, so I do make some pennies off of it if you decide to use it. But it's Luis, Luis. Just type that in the promo codes for Libsyn and you'll get a free month. But that should be taken care of in probably week 1. Anyways, week 4 is all about pre-launch and promotion planning. So you've got your episodes, check. You've got your artwork. You got Libsyn set up. You've got your description and all the good stuff there already taken care of in those early weeks when you're building out the content for the podcast. Now it's time to look at how are we going to get the word out, right? Pre-launch, promotion, and planning. It's all about how to get the word out. It's about a couple of things we do, I guess, to give you more value here and to make it easier for you is, first of all, we make a list. What I call it the low, medium, high fruit strategy. Meaning you have low hanging fruit, you have medium hanging fruit, and you have high hanging fruit. So I'm going to list out all of my low hanging fruit on a Google Sheet stock, all of my friends and family, all the people who I'm going to demand give me friggin' reviews and subscribes. And then I'm going to go to my medium, which is more like colleagues and people I know, maybe from past podcasts, people I've worked with who are good buddies, not exactly close, but they're in the middle there. Maybe a little bit higher influencers, people who I know have big followings who I've worked with could shout me out. And then that's level 2. And then level 3 are more like big people I barely know. And then also publications or media outlets who could potentially share my first shows because it's a content match for them. It's fitting a need that they need to fill. So that's like level 3 or high hanging fruit, which is high ROI, but there's less chance it's going to happen, right? So that is, in a sense, that's the first thing I create on those weeks where we're figuring out that kind of stuff. How are we going to get the word out there? Besides that, we're going to look at like email lists. Email is going to be sent out. So we would draft up, 2 or 3 emails to promote the show. In addition, there'd be some Facebook promo. And then also by now, if you're working with us, then a lot of it's like we've got the assets. So the 60-second and 15-second Instagram clips for you to share. So you can share a couple of those and also pre-sell yourself and pre-sell your podcast and let people know, hey, it's coming. Be sure to be ready. There's going to be a contest if there is one. So those are all some things that happen in this pre-launch phase with the podcast. We're just gathering lists. We're dripping content, feeding people a little bit, but not too much, kind of teasing it, and essentially getting ready to do a massive outreach and get people to help support us. So that is that. Number 5, which I separated into it used to just be 4 steps, but now it's 5. Who cares? Let's run with it, right? Number 5 is the launch week. So this is scheduling and queuing up, making sure all the podcasts come out on whatever day you want them to. Normally we do 5, then we do day by day. You're also going to make sure that all of your episodes after that, because you don't want to have a week of great stuff and then nothing the next week. You want to make sure you have your podcasts lined up for next week too. However many you're going to drop, just make sure they're ready. I suggest 2 weeks in advance because you don't know how crazy life could get. That's a second thing with that. And then also you're going to have a mapped out plan of how it's going to look on social media. So Instagram's going to have its own schedule of what podcast posts go out. Same thing with Facebook, same thing with LinkedIn, and email list. Like I said before, it's 2 emails really. So that is the launch week, right? I would also recommend getting on live on Facebook and Instagram live and just sharing, hey, I've got a podcast. Here it is. Here's the link. Here's some of the things we talk about in the first early episodes. Here are, Jane Doe and Mike Smith. Here, your questions answered. You can see them on the first episodes. You're drumming it up. You're talking about it. You're excited for it. You're sharing what's in it for them. That's all good stuff to include in a Facebook Live if you're going to do that. So I would suggest it. If you're going to launch a podcast, get on Instagram or Facebook and then just get after it. So anyways, that's it, guys. That is it, my friend. I hope you enjoy this. Hope you take those 4 or 5 steps and run with them and get some stuff done. Get your podcast going. I would love to hear from you if this helped you. Also, if it did help you, what would you like to hear? Over at Luis, Luis at podcastdomination.co. Luis at podcastdomination.co. Or you can find me on Instagram at Luis Ryan Diaz. So that is it. I'm not going to overwhelm you with too many links or places to go. Check out those 2 places for follow-up and feedback, and I will see you later. Hey, and don't forget, I have a number of free bonuses for you. These are free templates, guides, and stuff that I've actually included in my recent book, How to Get Your First 100,000 Downloads in 100 Days. But you don't even have to buy the book. I'm just going to give this to you for free. All you have to do is go to Luis Ryan, LuisRyan.com/book. There is a simple form where you fill out your name and your email, and you get a ton of free stuff, all the templates and guides that I included in the book, but you don't have to buy the book. So you're saving yourself a chunk of money that literally will take you probably less than 2 minutes to accomplish or perform. So enjoy that. That's my gift to you. Use it. Don't just let it fall by the wayside, and I'll see you on the next episode.